My name is Esther. I'm 32 years old. And I need to tell you about the day I heard my mother say something that almost broke me completely. It was a Sunday afternoon in March. The kind of day where the sun was shining, but the air still had that cold bite to it. You know those days when you can see your breath in the morning, but by noon you're squinting against the brightness? That's what it was like. I had just come back from another failed job interview. My fourth one that month. I was wearing my only professional outfit, a black blazer with a small tear in the lining that I hoped no one would notice, and gray pants that were a little too short but were the only ones that still fit me properly. The interview had been at a call center downtown. The manager had looked at my resume, looked at me, and I could see it in his eyes. That look. The one that said, "Why should I hire someone who's been at 5 different jobs in 2 years?" I didn't get the position. They said they'd call me, but I knew they wouldn't. So I was standing outside our apartment building, trying to gather enough courage to walk through the front door, trying to figure out how to tell my mother that I had failed again. I could hear voices through the open window on the second floor. My mother's voice, and Mrs. Rodriguez from apartment 2B. Mrs. Rodriguez was one of those women who knew everything about everyone in the building. She was kind enough, I suppose, but she had a way of turning every conversation into gossip that would spread through the entire neighborhood by dinner time. "How's Esther doing these days?" Mrs. Rodriguez asked. There was a pause. A long pause. And in that silence, I felt my stomach drop. Then my mother's voice came through, clear as glass. "Oh, you know Esther. She's still looking for work. But honestly, Rosa, I've stopped getting my hopes up. She's never been able to keep a job. 1 month here, 2 weeks there. I don't think she has what it takes." Mrs. Rodriguez made a sympathetic sound. "That must be so hard for you, Maria." "You have no idea," my mother said, and I could hear her sigh. "I've tried everything. I've given her advice, I've connected her with people, I've even prayed for her. But she just gives up. Every single time. I'm starting to think she's just lazy. Some people are like that, you know? They don't have that drive. That fire. Esther's always been soft. Too sensitive. The world eats people like that alive." I stood there on the sidewalk, my hand gripping my purse so tight my knuckles turned white. My heart was pounding in my chest. I could feel the heat rising to my face, that familiar burning sensation that comes right before tears. Lazy. Soft. No drive. That's what she called me. Not to my face, but to our neighbor. To someone who would tell other people. To someone who would look at me differently the next time she saw me in the hallway or at the grocery store. "Have you thought about, maybe she needs to see someone?" Mrs. Rodriguez said carefully. "Like a counselor? Maybe she's depressed." "Oh, Rosa, please," my mother said, and I could almost see her waving her hand dismissively. "Depression is what people call it when they don't want to face their problems. Back in my day, we didn't have time to be depressed. We had to work. We had to survive. Esther has a roof over her head, food on the table, and she still can't get herself together. That's not depression. That's laziness." I didn't go inside. I couldn't. My legs felt like they were made of lead, but somehow I managed to turn around and walk away. I walked around the block once. Then twice. Then a third time. The sun was starting to set. The street lights were coming on. I saw families inside their homes through lit windows, mothers cooking dinner, fathers reading newspapers, children doing homework at kitchen tables. Normal families. Functional families. Families where mothers believed in their daughters. When I finally came home an hour later, my mother was in the kitchen making dinner like nothing had happened. The smell of garlic and onions filled the small apartment. The TV was on in the living room, playing some telenovela she watched every evening. "You're late," she said without turning around. "Wash your hands. Dinner's almost ready." I didn't say anything. I just went to my room, closed the door, and sat on my bed in the dark. I stared at the wall for I don't know how long. The sounds of the apartment building filtered through, someone's music upstairs, a dog barking, the hum of traffic outside. And for the first time in years, I didn't cry. I was too numb for tears. Too empty. Too defeated. Because hearing someone call you worthless is one thing. You can tell yourself they don't know you, they don't understand you, they're wrong about you. But hearing your own mother say it? To a neighbor? Like it was a fact as simple as your age or your height. That's different. That's the kind of pain that doesn't make you cry. It makes you hollow. Let me tell you something about shame. It's not the same as sadness. Sadness makes you cry, and then eventually the tears stop and you feel a little bit better. You can talk about sadness. You can share it with people. You can say, I'm sad today, and people understand. But shame? Shame is different. Shame sits in your chest like a stone. Heavy and cold and permanent. It makes you feel small, not just small, but invisible. Like you're taking up space you don't deserve to occupy. Like the air you're breathing belongs to someone more worthy. Shame makes you avoid mirrors because you don't want to see the disappointment in your own eyes. It makes you walk with your shoulders hunched, your head down, your voice quiet. It makes you apologize for existing. That's how I felt that night. That's how I had felt for years really, but that night it became undeniable. Like I deserved every bad thing that had ever happened to me. Because maybe my mother was right. Maybe I was lazy. Maybe I didn't have what it took to succeed in this world. Maybe I was the problem and everyone else could see it except me. I had been looking for stable work for almost 3 years. Before that, I'd had a string of jobs that never lasted more than a few months. Retail at a clothing store, I got let go after the holiday season. Food service at a diner, I quit after the manager screamed at me for dropping a plate. Reception at a dental office, they said I wasn't friendly enough with patients. Customer support for an online company, I couldn't meet the call quotas. Each time, something would go wrong. Sometimes it was genuinely my fault. I'd oversleep and miss a shift because I'd been up all night worrying about money. I'd make a mistake I couldn't fix because I was so nervous about making mistakes. I'd freeze up when a customer got angry because confrontation made my hands shake and my mind go blank. Other times, it felt like the universe just didn't want me to succeed. Managers who took an instant dislike to me. Co-workers who excluded me from conversations and lunch breaks. Schedules that changed at the last minute. Training that was inadequate, but I was blamed for not knowing things. But the worst part wasn't the jobs themselves. It was coming home afterward. My mother never said it's okay, or you'll find something better, or I'm proud of you for trying. She said things like, again. What did you do this time? How long did this one last? I don't know what's wrong with you, Esther. When I was your age, I already had a career. Your cousin Monica would never quit a job like that. You're embarrassing me. Over time, those words became the voice in my head. The voice that whispered to me every morning when I woke up. The voice that told me I wasn't good enough, smart enough, strong enough, worthy enough. And eventually, after hearing it enough times from her and saying it enough times to myself, I started to believe it. I started to believe that I was fundamentally broken. That there was something wrong with me that couldn't be fixed. That other people could succeed, but I couldn't. That I was destined to be a failure for the rest of my life. And when you believe that about yourself, it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. I wasn't always like this. When I was a little girl, maybe 6 or 7 years old, I was full of hope. Full of dreams. Full of that bright, untouchable optimism that children have before the world teaches them to be afraid. I wanted to be a teacher. I used to line up all my dolls and stuffed animals in rows in my bedroom and teach them things. The alphabet. Numbers. Colors. Songs. I'd stand at my little plastic desk with a toy pointer and pretend I was in front of a real classroom. My mother would walk past my room and peek in sometimes. She'd smile. Actually smile. And she'd say, look at you. So smart. So organized. My little professora. Back then, I thought she was proud of me. I thought I was making her happy. I thought I was enough. But something changed as I got older. Or maybe I just started seeing her more clearly. Or maybe she started seeing me more clearly and didn't like what she saw. She had this way of comparing me to other people. Always other people. Never just me, standing alone, being evaluated on my own merits. At family gatherings, she'd point to my cousin Monica, the one with straight A's, the full scholarship, the acceptance into law school, and say, why can't you be more like her? She studies hard. She has goals. She has ambition. At church, she'd mention the neighbor's son who got a corporate job right out of college. See, Esther? That's what happens when you work hard and take life seriously. That's what success looks like. When my childhood friend Anna got engaged, my mother said, Anna found a good man because she takes care of herself. She dresses nicely. She's always smiling. You should learn from her. The implication was always clear. I wasn't working hard enough. I wasn't smart enough. I wasn't pretty enough. I wasn't ambitious enough. I wasn't feminine enough. I wasn't social enough. I wasn't enough. I tried to explain sometimes. I'd say, Mom, times are different now. The economy is harder. Jobs are more competitive. People my age are struggling everywhere. But she'd just wave her hand like I was making excuses. Everyone has challenges, Esther. Some people overcome them. Some people don't. That's just the way life is. The implication, I was one of the people who didn't. By the time I turned 25, I had stopped trying to impress her. What was the point? Nothing I did was ever good enough. I could have gotten a job at a Fortune 500 company and she would have asked why it wasn't a corner office. I could have earned a six-figure salary and she would have mentioned someone who earned more. So I just existed. I took whatever jobs I could find, saved what little money I had, and tried to stay out of her way. I became quiet. I stopped sharing my thoughts or dreams or fears. I stopped asking for her advice or her opinion. I stopped expecting her support. And in the process, I think I stopped expecting anything good from life at all. Living with someone who doesn't believe in you is like drowning in slow motion. Every day, a little more water fills your lungs. Every day, it gets a little harder to breathe. Every day, you sink a little deeper. And eventually, you forget what it feels like to be on dry land. You forget what it feels like to be safe. There was one memory from my childhood that I think about a lot. It's one of those memories that feels like a turning point, the moment when everything changed, even though I didn't realize it at the time. I was 9 years old. It was the school talent show, and I had signed up to sing. I wasn't a great singer, but I loved it. I loved the way music made me feel free, brave, like I could be someone different for 3 minutes. I practiced for weeks. I chose a song from a movie I loved, something about dreams and hope and believing in yourself. I memorized every word, every note, every breath. The day of the show, I was so nervous I thought I might throw up. I stood backstage with the other kids, my hands shaking, my heart pounding. When they called my name, I almost didn't walk out. But I did. I walked onto that stage, and the lights were so bright I could barely see the audience. The music started, and something magical happened. I forgot to be scared. I forgot to be nervous. I forgot to be Esther, the shy girl who never spoke up in class, who ate lunch alone, who got picked last in gym. I just sang. And when I finished, people clapped. Really clapped. Not the polite, obligatory clapping you do at school events, but real applause. Some people even stood up. My teacher, Mrs. Santos, was smiling so big. My classmates were cheering. A few of them were actually cheering for me. I felt like I was flying. I ran off the stage and found my mother in the audience. She was sitting in the third row, next to some other parents. I pushed through the crowd, so excited I could barely contain it. "Did you see me, Mom? Did you hear me sing?" She looked at me, and I'll never forget the expression on her face. It wasn't quite a smile, but it wasn't quite a frown either. It was something in between. Something disappointed. "You were fine," she said. "Fine. Just fine. But you were off-key in the second verse," she continued, adjusting her purse on her lap. "And you need to stand up straighter when you're on stage. You were slouching. It looked sloppy." I stood there, feeling all that excitement, all that joy, all that pride drain out of me like water from a broken cup. Around us, other parents were hugging their kids, telling them how wonderful they were, taking pictures, buying them ice cream. My mother stood up and said, "Come on. Let's go home. I have things to do." We walked to the car in silence. I got in the back seat and looked out the window, watching the school disappear behind us. And I remember thinking very clearly, asterisk, maybe I'm not good at anything. Maybe I'll never be good enough. Asterisk. That thought followed me for the next 23 years. It followed me through high school, where I stopped trying out for things because what was the point? It followed me through college, which I dropped out of because I couldn't afford it and my mother refused to help. It followed me through every job, every interview, every moment of self-doubt. That thought became the lens through which I saw myself. And once you start seeing yourself that way, it's almost impossible to see anything else. The weeks after I overheard my mother's conversation with Mrs. Rodriguez were some of the darkest of my life. I kept applying for jobs, but my heart wasn't in it anymore. I'd sit at my laptop, an old slow thing that took 5 minutes to boot up, scrolling through job listings, and all I could hear was her voice. She's lazy. She doesn't have what it takes. She's too soft. The world eats people like that alive. I started avoiding her even more than usual. I'd wake up early, before the sun came up, and leave the apartment before she got out of bed. I'd spend the day at the library or walking around the city or sitting in coffee shops, nursing a single cup of coffee for hours because I couldn't afford to buy anything else. I'd come home late, after she'd already gone to bed, and go straight to my room. We barely spoke. One night, she knocked on my door around 10 p.m. Esther, are you okay? You've been acting strange. I didn't answer. I was lying on my bed, staring at the ceiling, trying to will myself to fall asleep so I wouldn't have to think anymore. Esther, I'm talking to you. Open the door. I'm fine, Mom, I said through the door, my voice flat. I'm just tired. Well, you need to eat. You barely touched your dinner last night. Come have something. I'm not hungry. There was a long pause. I could hear her breathing on the other side of the door. You can't hide in there forever, you know. But I could try. And I did. I started having nightmares during that time. Not the kind where you're being chased or falling, but the kind where you're standing in a room full of people and you're trying to speak, trying to explain yourself, trying to make them understand, but no sound comes out of your mouth. You're screaming silently while everyone stares at you with pity or disgust or indifference. I'd wake up in the middle of the night, my heart racing, my sheets soaked with sweat. And I'd lie there in the darkness, listening to the sounds of the apartment building settling, wondering if this was all my life would ever be. Failure. Disappointment. Shame. I thought about leaving. Just packing a bag and disappearing. Going to another city, starting over where no one knew me, where I could be someone new. But I didn't have money for that. I barely had money for bus fare. So I stayed. And every day felt like I was carrying a weight that got heavier and heavier. It was a Thursday morning in early April when something shifted. I woke up at 5 a.m., earlier than usual. I hadn't set an alarm, my body just woke me up. I lay there for a while, watching the gray light of dawn creep through the thin curtains of my window. I thought about my life. Really thought about it. Not in the panicked, anxious way I usually did, but in a clear, almost detached way. I was 32 years old. I had no career, no savings, no prospects, no plan. I was living with my mother in a small apartment, sleeping in the same room I'd slept in as a child, surrounded by the same walls that had witnessed every failure, every disappointment, every moment of defeat. If I didn't change something, if I didn't do something different, this was going to be my entire life. This room. This apartment. This feeling. That thought terrified me. But it also did something else. It made me angry. Not the explosive, shouting kind of anger, but the quiet, burning kind. The kind that sits in your chest and turns into fuel. I was angry at my mother for not believing in me. I was angry at myself for believing her. I was angry at every employer who had rejected me, every person who had made me feel small, every moment that had brought me to this point. But most of all, I was angry at the idea that this was all I deserved. That this was all I'd ever be. I got out of bed and opened my laptop. I didn't even shower first. I just sat there in my pajamas, hair messy, eyes tired, and I started searching. Not for the easy jobs this time. Not for the positions that required no experience, no skills, no commitment. I looked for something real. Something meaningful. Something I could actually be proud of. I spent hours scrolling, reading descriptions, trying to figure out what I was even good at. Trying to remember who I was before life beat the hope out of me. And that's when I saw it. Personal assistant needed, Winters and Associates. The listing said, *, we're looking for a reliable, organized individual to assist our senior executive with scheduling, correspondence, and project coordination. This is a full-time position with competitive pay and benefits. Must be detail-oriented, discreet, and able to adapt to a fast-paced environment. Asterisk. I read it 3 times. Reliable. Organized. Detail-oriented. Those were words no one had ever used to describe me. But I wanted them to be true. I wanted to be those things. I looked at the salary. It was more than I'd ever made before. More than I'd even dreamed of making. I stared at the screen for a long time, my cursor hovering over the apply button. What if I failed again? What if I got the job and messed it up like all the others? What if this was just another disappointment waiting to happen? But then I thought, asterisk, what if I don't fail? What if this is the chance I've been waiting for? Asterisk. I clicked apply, before I could change my mind. I spent the next 2 hours crafting a cover letter. I rewrote it 6 times, trying to make it sound professional but honest. Confident but not arrogant. Capable but not overconfident. When I finally submitted it, my hands were shaking. Then I closed my laptop and sat there in the quiet of my room, the morning sun now fully lighting up the space. And I prayed. I hadn't prayed in years, not really prayed, the kind where you pour your heart out and beg for help. But I prayed that morning. Please, I whispered to whoever might be listening. Please let this be different. Please let me be different. Please give me a chance to prove that I'm more than what everyone thinks I am. 3 days later, on a Sunday afternoon, my phone rang. I was at the grocery store, standing in the produce section trying to decide if I could afford both apples and oranges or if I had to choose one. My phone buzzed in my pocket, and I almost didn't answer because I didn't recognize the number. But something made me pick up. Hello? Hi, is this Esther? The voice on the other end was professional, calm, female. Yes, this is Esther. Hi, Esther. My name is Caroline Winters. I'm calling about the personal assistant position you applied for. Do you have a moment to talk? My heart stopped. Actually stopped. Yes, I said, my voice coming out higher than normal. Yes, absolutely. I have time. Great. I was impressed by your application. I'd like to bring you in for an interview. Are you available tomorrow at 10 a.m.? Tomorrow. Tomorrow at 10 a.m. That was less than 24 hours away. Yes, I said immediately. Yes, I can be there. Perfect. I'll send you the address via email. And Esther. Yes. Don't be nervous. I'm looking for someone genuine, not someone perfect. Just be yourself. When I hung up, I stood there in the produce section of the grocery store, holding my phone, and I started crying. Right there between the apples and the bananas, tears streaming down my face. An elderly woman pushing a cart stopped and asked if I was okay. I'm fine, I said, laughing through my tears. I'm better than fine. I think something good might be about to happen. She smiled at me. Then cry all you want, Mija. Happy tears are the best kind. I left the grocery store without buying anything. I ran home, actually ran, even though it was 6 blocks, and burst into the apartment, breathless and sweating. My mother was in the living room watching TV. What's wrong with you? She asked, looking alarmed. Nothing, I said, trying to catch my breath. Nothing's wrong. Everything's. I have a job interview tomorrow. She raised her eyebrows. Another one? And just like that, the joy deflated a little. Another one. Like all the others. Like all the failures. Yes, I said quietly. Another one. Well, she said, turning back to the TV. I hope this one works out. But her tone said she didn't believe it would. I went to my room and closed the door. I decided right then that I wasn't going to tell her anything else about this job. Not where it was, not who it was with, not what it paid. Because this was mine. This opportunity, this chance, this hope, it belonged to me. And I wasn't going to let her take it away before I even had the chance to try. I barely slept that night. I laid out my interview outfit 3 times, trying to decide if it looked professional enough. The blazer, the pants, the one nice blouse I owned. I polished my shoes with a damp cloth. Ironed everything, even though I didn't own an iron and had to borrow my mother's. I practiced answering interview questions in the mirror. Tell me about yourself. What are your strengths? Why do you want this job? Every time I tried to answer, I stumbled over my words. I sounded desperate, or incompetent, or both. At 2 a.m., I gave up practicing and just sat at my window, looking out at the city lights, thinking about my life. I thought about all the jobs I'd had, all the interviews I'd bombed, all the times I'd come so close to success only to watch it slip through my fingers. I thought about my mother's words, "She doesn't have what it takes." And I made a decision. This time, I was going to prove her wrong. Not for her. For me. This time, I wasn't going to give up at the first sign of difficulty. I wasn't going to let my anxiety convince me I was incapable. I wasn't going to sabotage myself before I even had a chance to succeed. This time, I was going to fight. The interview was at a tall glass building downtown, the kind of building I'd walked past 100 times but never imagined actually entering. I arrived 30 minutes early and sat in a coffee shop across the street, trying to calm my nerves. I ordered a small coffee I couldn't really afford and sat by the window, watching people in business suits coming and going. They all looked so confident, so sure of themselves, so successful. I wondered if I'd ever look like that, if I'd ever feel like I belonged in a place like this. At 9:55, I crossed the street and entered the building. The lobby was enormous, with marble floors and high ceilings and a security desk where I had to sign in. Name? The security guard asked. Esther. Esther Martinez. I have an interview at Winters and Associates. He checked his computer, then handed me a visitor badge. 15th floor. Elevators are to your left. I took the badge with trembling hands and headed to the elevators. The ride up felt like it lasted forever. The elevator was mirrored on all sides, and I caught glimpses of myself, pale face, nervous eyes, hands clutching my purse too tightly. You can do this, I told my reflection. You can do this. The doors opened onto a sleek, modern office space. White walls, glass doors, contemporary furniture. A receptionist sat at a curved desk, typing on a computer. Hi, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. I'm Esther Martinez. I have a 10 a.m. interview with Ms. Winters. The receptionist smiled warmly. Of course. Have a seat. She'll be with you in just a moment. I sat on a leather couch that was more comfortable than my bed at home and tried to breathe. Tried to remember all the things I'd practiced saying. Tried not to think about all the ways this could go wrong. 5 minutes later, a woman appeared from a hallway. She was in her 40s, with dark hair pulled back in a neat bun, wearing a tailored navy suit that probably cost more than everything in my closet combined. She was beautiful in that effortless way some women are, not flashy, not trying too hard, just naturally elegant. Esther, she said, extending her hand. Yes, I stood up quickly, almost knocking over my purse. Yes, that's me. I'm Caroline Winters. Thank you for coming. Follow me. She led me to a conference room with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. We sat across from each other at a large table, and she pulled out a folder with my resume inside. So Esther, she began, looking at my resume. Tell me about yourself. This was it. The moment where I usually fumbled, where I usually said the wrong thing, where I usually talked myself out of the job. But this time, I took a deep breath and told her the truth. I've struggled, I said, my voice steadier than I expected. I've had jobs that didn't work out. I've made mistakes. I've failed more times than I can count. But I'm here because I'm ready to do better. I'm ready to prove, to myself more than anyone else, that I'm capable, that I'm reliable, that I can be the person someone trusts with important things. Caroline listened without interrupting. When I finished, she nodded slowly. I appreciate your honesty, she said. A lot of people come in here and pretend they're perfect. They give me all the right answers, say all the right things, but I can tell they're performing. You're not performing. You're being real. And that matters to me. She asked me more questions. About my organizational skills, my ability to handle stress, my willingness to learn. I answered as best as I could, and for the first time in an interview, I didn't feel like I was failing. After almost an hour, Caroline closed my folder and looked at me. Esther, I'm going to be honest with you. I've interviewed 6 people for this position, and most of them had more impressive resumes than yours. More experience, better references, fewer gaps in employment. My heart sank. Here it comes. The rejection. But, she continued, none of them had what you have. I looked at her, confused. What do I have? Humility. Determination. The willingness to admit you don't know everything but you're willing to learn. Those are rare qualities. And in my experience, they're more valuable than any resume. She stood up and extended her hand again. The job is yours if you want it. You start Monday. 8 a.m. Don't be late. I stared at her, my mind struggling to process what I'd just heard. What? She smiled. You start Monday, Esther. Welcome to Winters and Associates. I shook her hand, feeling like I was in a dream. Like at any moment I'd wake up and realize none of this was real. But it was real. It was happening. I had a job. A real job. With a real salary and benefits and a future. I left that building in a complete daze. I walked down the street, past the coffee shop, past the bus stop where I should have caught my ride home. I just walked. Block after block after block. The sun was shining. The city was alive with people and cars and noise. And for the first time in years, I felt like I was part of it. Like I belonged. Like maybe, just maybe, I was going to be okay. I didn't go straight home. I couldn't. I needed time to process what had just happened. To let it sink in. To believe it was real. I found a small park and sat on a bench for almost 2 hours, just thinking. Just feeling. I thought about all the years I'd spent believing I was worthless. All the times I'd let my mother's words define me. All the moments I'd given up on myself before anyone else had the chance to. And I thought about Caroline's words, asterisk humility, determination, the willingness to learn, asterisk. Maybe those things were more valuable than I'd realized. Maybe my struggles hadn't been a sign of weakness. Maybe they'd been making me stronger all along, and I just couldn't see it. When I finally went home, it was almost 5 p.m. My mother was in the kitchen preparing dinner, the smell of rice and beans filling the apartment. Where have you been? She asked. Your interview was at 10. It's almost dinner time. I got the job, I said quietly. She turned around, spatula in hand. What? I got the job. I start Monday. She stared at me for a moment, like she wasn't sure whether to believe me. Well, she finally said, turning back to the stove. Let's see how long this one lasts. And just like that, the moment was over. No congratulations. No celebration. No pride. Just doubt. I went to my room, closed the door, and sat on my bed. And I made another decision. I wasn't going to tell her anything else about this job. Not what I'd be doing, not who I'd be working for, not how much I'd be making. This was mine. My success. My chance. And I was going to protect it. That weekend, I prepared like my life depended on it. Because in a way, it did. I researched Winters and Associates. I learned everything I could about the company, what they did, who their clients were, what their values were. I planned my route to the office 3 different ways, accounting for traffic and bus delays. I timed each route so I'd know exactly when to leave. I washed and ironed my clothes. I polished my shoes again. I practiced introducing myself, shaking hands, making eye contact. On Sunday night, I set 3 alarms, 5 a.m., 5:15 a.m., and 5:30 a.m., because I was terrified of oversleeping. My mother knocked on my door around 9 p.m. Esther, are you going somewhere tomorrow? Yes, I said through the door. Where? Work. You're starting already? I thought you said Monday. Tomorrow is Monday, Mom. Oh, right. A pause. What time do you need to leave? Early. How early? Very early. Another pause. Are you going to tell me anything about this job? Not right now. I could hear her sigh through the door. You're being very secretive. I'm your mother. I have a right to know what you're doing. I'll tell you more when I'm ready, I said. She didn't respond. I heard her footsteps retreat down the hallway, and then the sound of her bedroom door closing. I lay in bed that night, staring at the ceiling, too nervous and excited to sleep. My mind kept racing through all the things that could go wrong. What if I was late on my first day? What if I made a mistake? What if Caroline realized she'd made a wrong decision in hiring me? But then I remembered something she'd said, just be yourself. So that's what I decided to do. I'd show up. I'd work hard. I'd be honest when I didn't know something. I'd learn as fast as I could. And I'd prove to Caroline, to my mother, but most importantly to myself, that I was capable of more than anyone had ever believed. My first day at Winters & Associates was both terrifying and exhilarating. I arrived 45 minutes early, which meant I stood outside the building in the cold morning air, watching the sun rise over the city, waiting for the doors to open. When they finally did, I rode the elevator to the 15th floor with my heart pounding so hard I thought everyone could hear it. Caroline was already there, sitting in her office with a cup of coffee, reviewing documents. "Esther," she said when she saw me, smiling. "You're early. That's a good sign. Come in." She spent the first hour giving me a tour of the office, introducing me to people whose names I immediately forgot because I was so nervous. She showed me my desk, a clean, organized space by a window, and explained my basic responsibilities. I'd be managing her calendar, scheduling meetings, handling phone calls and emails, coordinating with clients, and assisting with various projects as needed. It sounded overwhelming, but I nodded and took notes and promised I'd do my best. "I'm going to be honest with you," Caroline said as we sat in her office. "The first week is going to be hard. There's a lot to learn, and you're going to make mistakes. That's okay. That's expected. What matters is that you ask questions when you don't understand something, and that you learn from those mistakes." "I will," I said. "I promise." "Good. Now, let's get started." She wasn't kidding about the first week being hard. There was so much to learn. So many systems and processes and people and protocols. I took notes constantly, filling an entire notebook in 3 days. I stayed late every evening, reviewing everything I'd learned, making sure I understood it. And yes, I made mistakes. On my second day, I accidentally double-booked one of Caroline's meetings. On my third day, I forgot to send an important email to a client. On my fourth day, I spilled coffee on a report that needed to be delivered that afternoon. Every time I messed up, I braced myself for the anger, the criticism, the disappointment I was so used to receiving. But Caroline never reacted that way. When I double-booked her meeting, she said, "It's okay. We'll reschedule one of them. Just make sure to check the calendar twice before confirming anything." When I forgot to send the email, she said, "No problem. I'll send it now, and next time, set a reminder for yourself." When I spilled coffee on the report, she said, "Accidents happen. We have time to reprint it. Just be more careful next time. No yelling. No insults. No making me feel stupid or worthless. Just patience, understanding, and the belief that I could do better." It was so different from anything I'd experienced before that I almost didn't know how to respond. By the second week, I started to find my rhythm. I developed systems for keeping track of things. I created color-coded calendars and detailed checklists. I arrived 30 minutes early every day to review the schedule and make sure everything was in order. And slowly, the mistakes became less frequent. Caroline noticed. One morning, she called me into her office. My heart immediately jumped to my throat. This is it, I thought. She's going to tell me it's not working out. But instead she smiled and said, "Esther, I wanted to tell you something. You're doing really well. I know the first couple of weeks were rough, but you've improved so much. I can tell you're putting in the effort, and I appreciate it." I stared at her, not quite believing what I was hearing. "Really?" I managed to say, "Really? You're organized, you're attentive, and you genuinely care about doing good work. Those qualities are hard to find. I'm glad I hired you." When I left her office that day, I felt like I was walking on air. Someone believed in me. Someone saw my effort. Someone thought I was doing well. It was a feeling I hadn't experienced in so long that I'd forgotten what it felt like. The weeks turned into months, and something incredible started happening. I started believing in myself. Not all at once. Not in some dramatic, transformative moment. But slowly, gradually, like watching the sun rise, so slowly you don't notice it happening until suddenly everything is bright. I started arriving at work feeling confident instead of terrified. I started speaking up in meetings instead of staying silent. I started offering suggestions instead of just following orders. And people listened to me. They valued my input. They treated me like I mattered. I made friends with my coworkers. Jennifer, who worked in accounting, started inviting me to lunch. Marcus, one of the junior associates, would stop by my desk to chat about his weekend. Even Caroline started treating me less like an employee and more like a trusted colleague. One Friday afternoon, Jennifer said to me, "You know, Esther, when you first started, you seemed so nervous. Like you were afraid to even breathe wrong. But you've really come into your own. It's amazing to see." I thought about that comment for days. Come into your own. Is that what I'd been doing? Becoming the person I was always meant to be? Maybe. Or maybe I was just finally becoming the person I'd been before life and my mother's words had broken me down. Either way, it felt good. At home, things were complicated. I was leaving early and coming home late. My mother barely saw me during the week. On weekends, I'd spend most of my time in my room, resting and preparing for the next week. She started asking questions. "So this job, what exactly do you do?" "I'm a personal assistant to an executive." "And they're paying you well?" "Yes." "How much?" "Enough." "Esther, I'm your mother. You can tell me these things." But I didn't want to. Because every time I shared something good with her, she found a way to diminish it, to question it, to make it seem less significant than it was. So I kept my answers vague and changed the subject. She didn't like it. I could tell. But I didn't care. For the first time in my life, I was putting my own needs first. And that felt revolutionary. 3 months into the job, something significant happened. Caroline called me into her office on a Thursday afternoon. This time, I wasn't nervous. We developed a good working relationship by then, and I trusted that if there was a problem, she'd tell me directly. "Esther, I want to talk to you about something," she said, gesturing for me to sit down. "Okay," I said, settling into the chair across from her desk. "As you know, I've been working on launching a new division of the company, a consulting arm that focuses specifically on small business development. It's a big project, and it's going to require someone I can trust completely to help me manage it." I nodded, wondering where this was going. "I've been thinking about who that person should be," she continued. "And I keep coming back to you." My heart started beating faster. "Me? Yes, you. You've proven yourself over these past few months, Esther. You're reliable, you're organized, you pay attention to details, and most importantly, you genuinely care about the work. I can't think of anyone better suited for this role." "What would it entail?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "You'd be the assistant director of operations for the new division. You'd help me coordinate with clients, manage project timelines, oversee administrative tasks, and essentially help me build this thing from the ground up. It would mean more responsibility, longer hours sometimes, and a lot of problem solving on the fly." She paused, then added, "And a significant raise. About 40% more than you're making now." I couldn't speak. I literally couldn't form words. 40% more. That was more money than I'd ever dreamed of making. That was security. That was independence. That was proof. "I don't need an answer right now," Caroline said, misinterpreting my silence. "Take a few days to think about it." "No," I said quickly. "I don't need to think about it. Yes. Absolutely yes. Thank you. Thank you so much for this opportunity." She smiled. "I was hoping you'd say that. You start in the new role next Monday. Congratulations, Esther. You've earned this." I left her office in a daze. I walked back to my desk, sat down, and just stared at my computer screen, not really seeing it. I had done it. I had actually done it. I had not only kept a job, but I'd excelled at it. I'd been promoted. I'd been recognized for my hard work. And I'd done it all on my own. That evening, I went home with a lightness in my chest I hadn't felt in years. My mother was in the living room when I walked in, watching one of her shows. "You're home late again," she said without looking at me. "I had a good day," I said, unable to keep the smile off my face. She turned to look at me then, eyebrows raised. "Oh, I got promoted." She muted the TV. "Promoted? Already? You've only been there a few months." "3 months," I said. "And yes, promoted. I'm going to be Assistant Director of Operations for a new division they're launching." She stared at me for a long moment. That's actually impressive, Esther." "Thank you. How much are they paying you now?" And there it was. Not "I'm proud of you," or "You've worked hard for this." Just "How much are they paying you?" "Enough," I said, the smile fading from my face. "Enough for what?" "Enough to start saving for my own place." The words came out before I'd even planned them. But once they were out there, I realized they were true. That's what I wanted. My own space. My own life. Independence. My mother's expression changed. "Your own place? You're moving out." "Not right now," I said. "But eventually, yes. After everything I've done for you." "Mom," I interrupted, something in me finally snapping. "I appreciate that you've given me a place to live. I do. But I'm 32 years old. It's time for me to live my own life." She opened her mouth to respond, but I didn't wait to hear it. I went to my room and closed the door. My hands were shaking. I'd never stood up to her like that before. I'd never asserted myself, never drawn a boundary. It felt terrifying, but it also felt necessary. The weeks that followed were transformative in ways I couldn't have predicted. My new role came with new challenges, but also new opportunities. I was involved in meetings with important clients. I was helping make decisions that affected the direction of the company. I was being trusted with sensitive information and significant responsibilities. And I rose to meet every challenge. I worked harder than I'd ever worked in my life. Some days I was at the office for 12 hours. But it didn't feel like the soul-crushing exhaustion I'd experienced at my previous jobs. It felt purposeful. It felt like building something. Caroline became more than just my boss. She became a mentor. She'd take time to explain not just what needed to be done, but why. She'd ask my opinion on decisions and actually listen to my input. She'd share stories from her own career, including her failures and setbacks. "You know, Esther," she said to me one day over coffee, 10 years ago, I was where you are now. Working twice as hard as everyone else, trying to prove I deserve to be in the room. It's exhausting, isn't it?" "Yes," I admitted. "But here's what I learned. You don't have to prove yourself to anyone except yourself. Once you internalize that, once you truly believe you belong, everything changes. People can sense it. They respond to it." I thought about her words a lot. About belonging. About deserving success. All my life, I'd felt like an imposter. Like I was pretending to be someone I wasn't, waiting for everyone to realize I was a fraud. But working at Winters and Associates, seeing my competence reflected in other people's trust and respect, I started to believe something different. Maybe I wasn't an imposter. Maybe I had always been capable, and I just needed the right environment and the right support to show it. I started saving money aggressively. Every paycheck, I put away as much as I could into a separate bank account my mother didn't know about. I wasn't just saving for an apartment. I was saving for freedom. For independence. For the ability to make choices based on what I wanted, not on what I could afford or what my mother thought I should do. By my 6th month at the company, I had enough saved for a security deposit and first month's rent on a small apartment. I started looking at listings online. Nothing fancy, just a studio or a 1-bedroom in a safe neighborhood. A place that was mine. I didn't tell my mother yet. I wanted to have everything arranged first, to present it as a done deal rather than something she could talk me out of. The day everything changed came on a rainy Tuesday morning in November. I had overslept slightly, not enough to be late, but enough that my usual routine was rushed. I called Caroline as I was getting ready, apologizing for the delay. "Don't worry about it," she said. "Traffic is terrible because of the rain anyway. Tell you what, I'll have Peter bring the company car to pick you up. You can work on some documents during the drive." "Are you sure?" I asked. "I can take the bus." "Esther, You're now assistant director. You're allowed to use company resources. Peter will be there in 20 minutes. I thanked her and hung up, my heart racing. The company car. That sleek black vehicle I'd seen pick up executives from the building. And now it was coming for me. I finished getting ready in a rush, grabbing my bag and my umbrella. I was just heading out the door when my mother appeared from the kitchen. Where are you going so early? It's pouring out there. Work, I said. I'm running a bit late. You should wait for the rain to let up. I can't. I have meetings. Someone's picking me up. Who? The company driver. She raised her eyebrows but didn't say anything else. I hurried down the stairs and out of the building. 20 minutes later, right on schedule, a sleek black sedan pulled up to the curb. The driver, a professional older man named Peter whom I'd met a few times at the office, stepped out with an umbrella and opened the back door for me. Good morning, Ms. Martinez, he said with a smile. Good morning, Peter. Thank you so much for this. My pleasure. Ms. Winters said you have some documents to review during the drive. Yes, thank you. I slid into the back seat, soft leather, immaculately clean, the faint scent of new car and rain. Peter closed the door gently and walked around to the driver's seat. And that's when I saw her. My mother. Standing on the sidewalk about 20 feet away, under a small umbrella, staring at the car with an expression I couldn't quite read. She must have followed me downstairs. Maybe she was going to the corner store. Maybe she was just curious. Either way, she was there. Watching. Our eyes met through the rain-streaked window. For a moment, time seemed to stop. I could see the shock on her face. The confusion. The realization that this was real, that I wasn't making up stories about my job, that I really was doing well, that I really had succeeded in a way she'd never expected. I didn't wave. I didn't smile smugly or gloat. I didn't do anything dramatic. I just looked at her. Calm. Steady. At peace. Then Peter pulled away from the curb, and she disappeared from view. I spent the entire drive to the office trying to process what had just happened. She had seen me. Really seen me. Not the failure she described to Mrs. Rodriguez. Not the disappointment she'd expected me to be. But the successful professional woman I was becoming. Part of me felt vindicated. After all those years of doubt and criticism, she'd finally witnessed proof that she'd been wrong about me. But another part of me felt sad. Because why did it take a company car for her to see my worth? Why did I have to have external markers of success before she could believe in me? Why wasn't my effort enough? My determination? My growth? Why did I have to prove myself to the world before she could see me? When I got home that evening, she was waiting in the living room. She'd been waiting all day, I could tell. She looked like she'd been rehearsing what to say. Esther, she said as soon as I walked in. We need to talk. Okay, I said, setting down my bag. That car this morning. The company car. Yes. They send a car for you? Sometimes. When the weather's bad or when I need to work during the commute. She was quiet for a moment, processing. And your job, what exactly do you do again? I'm the assistant director of operations for a new division. I help manage projects, coordinate with clients, oversee administrative functions. Assistant director, she repeated slowly, like she was tasting the words. Yes. Esther, why didn't you tell me you were doing so well? I looked at her directly. I did tell you, Mom. I told you I got the job. I told you I got promoted. But you never seemed interested in the details. You just wanted to know how much money I was making. She flinched slightly. That's not fair. Isn't it? I kept my voice calm, but firm. When was the last time you asked me how I felt about my work? Whether I enjoyed it? Whether I was learning anything? Whether I was proud of myself? I just assumed. You assumed I'd fail, I finished. Like I always had before. You assumed this job would be like all the others. That I'd quit or get fired within a few weeks. That's not true. Mom, I said quietly. I heard you. Back in March. Talking to Mrs. Rodriguez. You told her I was lazy. That I didn't have what it takes. That I'd never amount to anything. Her face went pale. You heard that? Every word. She sat down heavily on the couch. Esther, I didn't mean. It doesn't matter what you meant. You said it. And it hurt. It hurt so much that I almost believed it. I almost let your words define me for the rest of my life. Tears were forming in her eyes. I was frustrated. You were struggling so much, and I didn't know how to help you. I was worried about you. Then you should have told me that. You should have said, Esther, I'm worried about you. How can I support you? Instead, you criticized me. You compared me to other people. You made me feel worthless. I never meant to make you feel worthless. But you did. The silence that followed was heavy with years of unspoken pain. Finally, my mother spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, Esther. I was wrong. About so many things. You're not lazy. You're not a failure. You're actually amazing. Look at what you've accomplished. It was the apology I'd wanted to hear for so long. But now that I was hearing it, I realized something. It wasn't enough. Because she was only apologizing now that I'd proven myself successful by external standards. She was only proud now that there was something to be proud of that other people could see. Thank you for the apology, I said. But I need you to understand something. I didn't get this job to prove you wrong. I didn't succeed to earn your approval. I did it for myself. To prove to myself that I was capable. That I was worthy. That I deserved good things. I know, she said, wiping her eyes. And I'm proud of you for that. Are you? I asked. Are you proud of me, or are you proud of what I've become in other people's eyes? She didn't answer. Maybe she couldn't. Maybe she didn't know the difference. I'm moving out, Mom, I said, the decision crystallizing in that moment. I've been saving money, and I'm ready to get my own place. Esther, please. It's not because I'm angry. It's because I need space to continue growing. I need to live my own life, make my own decisions, without constantly feeling like I'm being judged or measured against some impossible standard. She nodded slowly, tears streaming down her face. When? Soon. Within the next month. Will you still come visit? Yes, I said, and I meant it. I'm not cutting you out of my life, Mom. I'm just setting boundaries. Creating space for myself. I hope you can understand that. I'm trying, she whispered. I went to my room then, emotionally exhausted, but also, strangely, at peace. I had finally said the things I needed to say. I had finally stood up for myself. I had finally chosen me. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of apartment hunting, packing, and preparing for the move. I found a small one-bedroom apartment in a quiet neighborhood about 30 minutes from work. It wasn't fancy, but it had hardwood floors, good natural light, and most importantly, it was mine. My co-workers helped me move. Jennifer brought cleaning supplies and helped me scrub every surface. Marcus helped carry furniture I'd bought secondhand. Even Caroline stopped by with a housewarming gift, a beautiful potted plant and a card that read, "Here's to new beginnings." My mother came by on moving day. She helped unpack kitchen boxes without saying much. When everything was done, she stood in my new living room and looked around. "It's nice," she said quietly. "It suits you." "Thank you." She turned to me, her eyes wet. "I really am proud of you, Esther. Not just because of your job or your apartment, but because of who you've become. You're stronger than I ever gave you credit for." I hugged her then. Not because everything was fixed between us, it wasn't. But because she was still my mother, and somewhere beneath all the hurt and disappointment, I still loved her. "Thank you, Mom." That night, after everyone had left, I sat alone in my new apartment. It was quiet, peaceful, mine. I thought about my journey, from the broken, defeated woman who'd overheard her mother call her lazy, to the confident, capable woman I was now. It hadn't been easy. There were still days when I doubted myself. Days when the old voices of self-criticism crept back in. Days when I felt like an imposter. But those days were becoming rarer. Because I had proof now. Not just external proof like a job title or a paycheck, but internal proof. The knowledge that I could face challenges and overcome them. That I could fall and get back up. That I could grow and change and become more than I'd ever believed possible. 6 months after I moved out, something wonderful happened. Caroline called me into her office and told me she was promoting me again, this time to Director of Operations for the entire new division, which had grown significantly. "You've not only met every expectation, Esther," she said, "you've exceeded them. You're a leader. You're someone people trust and respect. You've earned this position." I accepted with gratitude and pride. But more than that, I accepted with belief in myself. Because I finally understood that my worth wasn't determined by my job title or my salary or what anyone else thought of me. My worth was inherent. It had always been there, waiting for me to recognize it. A year after I started at Winters & Associates, my mother invited me to dinner at her apartment. We'd been slowly rebuilding our relationship. Weekly phone calls. Monthly dinners. Careful conversations where we both tried to be better versions of ourselves. That night, as we sat at her kitchen table eating the meal she'd prepared, she said something that surprised me. "Mrs. Rodriguez asked about you yesterday." I looked up from my plate. "Oh." She wanted to know how you were doing. I told her you're doing wonderfully. That you're a director at a major consulting firm. That you have your own apartment. That you're thriving. What did she say? My mother smiled. She said she always knew you'd make something of yourself. I almost laughed. Mrs. Rodriguez had been right there when my mother called me lazy. But that was the thing about people, they rewrote history to make themselves feel better. "And you know what I realized?" my mother continued. "I should have always known too. I should have seen what Caroline saw, your determination, your resilience, your capacity for growth. I'm sorry I didn't see it sooner." "Thank you for saying that," I said quietly. "You've taught me something, Esther. You've taught me that success isn't always loud or obvious. Sometimes it's quiet. Sometimes it's about showing up every day and doing the work even when no one's watching. Even when no one believes in you." I felt tears prick my eyes. "Mom, can I tell you something?" "Of course." "There were so many times I wanted to give up. So many times I thought you were right about me, that I was lazy, that I didn't have what it took. But something in me refused to accept that. Something in me kept fighting, even when I didn't know why." "What kept you going?" she asked. I thought about it. "Hope, I guess. Hope that I could be more than what you said I was. More than what I believed I was. Hope that somewhere inside me was a person worth believing in." "And you found her," my mother said, reaching across the table to take my hand. "I did," I said. "I finally did." It's been 2 years now since I started at Winters & Associates. 2 years since the day I decided to stop letting other people's opinions define me. My life looks completely different now. I'm successful in my career. I'm financially independent. I have friendships that are genuine and supportive. I have a relationship with my mother that, while not perfect, is honest and respectful. But more than any of that, I have something I didn't have before, peace with myself. I know who I am now. I know my strengths and my weaknesses. I know what I'm capable of. I know my worth isn't tied to my job or my achievements or anyone else's approval. I am enough. Just as I am. Always have been. Always will be. Last week, something happened that made me smile. I was at a coffee shop, working on my laptop, when a young woman approached me nervously. "Excuse me," she said. "I'm sorry to bother you, but I overheard your phone call, and you sounded so confident and professional. Can I ask what you do?" I told her about my job, and her eyes lit up. "That's amazing," she said. "I've been unemployed for 6 months, and I feel like I'm never going to find anything. Every interview I go to, I feel like a failure. Do you have any advice?" I looked at her, really looked at her, and I saw myself 2 years ago. The same fear. The same self-doubt. The same desperation for someone to believe in her. "I was where you are not that long ago," I said. "And I know how hard it is. I know how it feels to think you'll never be enough. But here's what I learned. You have to believe in yourself first. Before anyone else does. You have to decide that you're worth fighting for, and then you have to fight." "What if I keep failing?" she asked, her voice breaking. "Then you fail," I said gently. "And then you get up and try again. Because failure isn't the end of your story. It's just a chapter. And you get to decide what the next chapter says. She thanked me with tears in her eyes and walked away. And I sat there, feeling grateful for my journey, all of it, even the painful parts. Because the painful parts made me who I am. They gave me empathy. They gave me strength. They gave me the ability to sit in a coffee shop and offer hope to a stranger who needed it. My mother and I had coffee yesterday. She asked me if I was happy. Yes, I said without hesitation. I really am. I'm glad, she said. You deserve to be happy. So do you, Mom. She smiled. I'm working on it. We're both working on it. That's all we can do. So here's what I want to leave you with, whoever's listening to this story. If you're struggling right now, if you feel invisible, unvalued, not good enough, please hear me when I say this. You are seen. You are valued. You are enough. Not because of what you do or what you achieve or what other people think of you, but because you exist. Because you're trying. Because you're here, fighting to become the person you know you can be. Your journey is your own. It won't look like anyone else's. It won't follow a perfect timeline. It won't be easy. But it will be worth it. Because on the other side of all that struggle and doubt and fear is a version of you that's stronger, wiser, and more resilient than you can imagine right now. And that version of you is worth fighting for. My mother once told everyone I'd never keep a job. She was wrong. But more importantly, I proved to myself that she was wrong. Not through anger or revenge or bitterness, but through quiet, persistent, determined effort. Through showing up every day even when it was hard. Through believing in myself when no one else would. The person who picked me up for work that rainy Tuesday morning, Peter in that company car, didn't prove my mother wrong. I proved her wrong. By becoming the person I always had the potential to be. By refusing to let her words become my reality. By choosing to define myself on my own terms. And that's the kind of success that no one can ever take away from you. Not your mother. Not your critics. Not your doubters. Not even yourself on your worst days. Because once you know your worth, once you truly understand that you are capable and deserving and enough, it becomes unshakable. It becomes who you are. There's a moment I think about sometimes. It was about 6 months after I started my job. I was walking to work on a beautiful morning, and I caught my reflection in a shop window. For just a second, I didn't recognize myself. The woman in the reflection stood tall, walked with confidence, looked like she knew where she was going and believed she deserved to be there. And I realized, that woman was me. Somewhere along the way, without even noticing, I had become her. The woman I'd always hoped I could be. If I could go back and talk to the Esther who stood outside that apartment building in March, the one who heard her mother call her lazy and worthless, I'd tell her this. I know it hurts. I know it feels like you'll never be enough. I know you want to give up. But don't. Because 8 months from now, you're going to be sitting in an office you never imagined working in, doing a job you never thought you could do. You're going to have friends who respect you, a boss who believes in you, and most importantly, you're going to believe in yourself. All the pain you're feeling right now? It's not wasted. It's building you into someone stronger than you can imagine. So hold on. Just a little longer. Better days are coming. And you're going to be the one who brings them. My mother called me this morning. She wanted to tell me that she ran into an old friend who asked about me. I told her you're doing wonderfully, my mother said. That I'm proud of you. Are you? I asked. Truly? Yes, she said, and I could hear the sincerity in her voice. Not because of your job or your title or your apartment, but because of who you are. Because you didn't let me break you. Because you found a way to believe in yourself when I failed to believe in you. That takes courage, Esther. Real courage. Thank you, Mom, I said, feeling tears in my eyes. No, she said. Thank you. For teaching me that it's never too late to see someone clearly. For showing me what strength really looks like. So this is my story. The story of how I went from being the daughter who couldn't keep a job to the woman who kept something far more important, her dignity, her hope, and her belief in herself. It's not a story of revenge or triumph over others. It's a story of triumph over myself, over my doubts, my fears, my internalized criticism. It's a story about learning that the only opinion that truly matters is your own. It's a story about discovering that you don't need permission to become who you're meant to be. You just need courage. And persistence. And the willingness to keep trying even when everything inside you is screaming to give up. There's one more thing I want to share before I finish this story. Last month, I attended a company event, a celebration for the successful launch of our new division. There were important clients there, senior executives, people who had been with the company for decades. Caroline stood up to give a speech, thanking everyone who had contributed to making the division a success. And then she said something that made my heart stop. But there's one person I want to recognize in particular. When I hired Esther Martinez 2 years ago, I took a chance on someone who didn't have the most impressive resume. Someone who had struggled and failed and been knocked down more times than most people could count. But I saw something in her that I knew was valuable: humility, determination, and an unshakable work ethic. And I want everyone here to know that Esther has been instrumental in building what we have today. She's not just an employee. She's a leader. She's proof that potential isn't about where you've been, it's about where you're willing to go.